and our relationship with the work being done by government, because part of our work is not to interfere with government, but to help politically guide the work in government. There's a difference with interference and guiding strategically. The African National Congress Gauteng Provincial Task Team held its ordinary meeting on Monday, 7th July 2025 in Ekurhuleni to reflect on the work done to unite, renew, rebuild and strengthen the organization, and to assess readiness for upcoming regional conferences. The meeting took place amid continuing efforts to advance organizational discipline and preparations for the 2026 local government elections. The meeting occurred in a period of deep reflection and tribute to departed comrades of the liberation movement. That week when we met, there were a number of comrades who had passed on. The PTT observed a moment of silence in honor of the late Comrade David Mabuza, former Deputy President of the ANC and the Republic of South Africa, and Comrade Tholi Thembelihle Ngwenya, a dynamic young leader who was a current member of the ANC Youth League Gauteng Provincial Executive Committee. Their impact and contributions will forever remain etched in the memory of our movement. As you know, Tholi Thembelihle was working for the Youth Employment Service and seconded to the office of the CEO of BUSA by years, the Youth Employment Service. She was also appointed to the Youth Advisory Panel of the province, but passed on before this announcement. It was a sad situation. The Premier couldn't announce. She actually was to announce when he comes back from Spain, but she passed on before the announcement could be made. Because she is a young person, 31 years old, who was making waves on many areas of policy, research, and ensuring that young people have a say. She was also leading a march of the Youth League to the province on the issues of the GCRA and so on. She was at the forefront of those campaigns. Many of you, I don't want to bore you on the Deputy President. You participated in the morning period, and the funeral. The ANC Gauteng PTT discussed a report about the state of the organization in the 5 ANC regions of Gauteng: Greater Johannesburg, Greater Tshwane, Ekurhuleni, Sidibeng and West Rand, ANC Leagues, MK Liberation War Veterans, and Alliance. The discussion also focused on 4 ANC regions: Greater Johannesburg, Greater Tshwane, Ekurhuleni and Sidibeng, which are preparing for their respective regional conferences this year. The report detailed relatively good progress made on the following areas: political education. The rollout of the ANC's foundation course across branches remains a cornerstone of the renewal agenda. And remember, there are 5 modules in that foundation course. Over 140 branches in both Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni have made significant strides in completing the 5 foundation course modules, reinforcing a culture of ideological work and political discipline. More work is continuing at branch level to implement the foundation course. Remember, foundation course, it's ongoing. If members leave the probation period, become members, foundation course must be organized. It's an ongoing work. Those who have done the foundation course gets into the OR Tambo courses, which are standard, they are diversified in various areas. So we're going to have the process of rebuilding is going to involve political education on an ongoing basis. But it has been welcomed. In fact, nationally, the political education subcommittee of the NEC says Gauteng is leading in terms of the number of people who have gone through the foundation course. So it's not us, it's in terms of the number of members and leaders who have gone back, because Gauteng has always historically led in the areas of political education. But the foundation course was welcomed very, very well by many of our members, and they've taken it up. Remember, West Rand is also there because it's not going to conference. So it's ongoing, even post-conferences, towards the NGC, post-NGC, it's going to happen. And the way we're going to structure our work, branches must have a branch general meeting and a political education workshop. They can at least have one per month. But some branches will have maybe once a week. But at least a minimum of once a month, they should have a session on political education. And then others will be additional. The PTT resolved that all branches with outstanding foundation course modules should schedule sessions to complete them. Others have done 1, others 2, others 3, others 4. They should complete the 5 modules. On community outreach, through, let's say, my campaigns, detailed report was given per branch on at least those 2 courses, outreach that we have done. You would have a branch going to clean the graveyard, working with the municipality. You'll have a branch going to...
Stop using ChatGPT for prompts. Use it for systems to automate half of your life. It's 2025. AI can build a pro-level website within a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, you're still at...
which was the tasks which were and rebuilding trust with the people. ANC membership online system. Although there are still teething problems which are being attended to daily by the ANC National Organizing and Membership Department, working directly with regions and branches, efforts have been and are continuing to be made through the new online ANC membership system to ensure accuracy in branch membership information ahead of BBGMs, that is the branch biennial general meetings and branch general meetings. I'll outline that in case there are issues you want to ask. Conference roadmaps. Revised timelines for all 4 regions were noted by the PTT, with conferences scheduled between July and August 2025. The PTT resolved that when necessary, regional task teams should rework their conference roadmaps to ensure maximum participation of branches. Normally, ANC, we take 70% of branches in good standing to be the percentage to take to conference. Some of our regions have passed that percentage in terms of administrative compliance of branches in good standing. We separate administrative good standing and political good standing. Foundation course, community work, and so on. That's the political being in good standing politically. So the reworking of the roadmaps is to allow more branches to participate. So that you can go, we don't necessarily say because I've reached 70%, I must go and lift 30% of the branches out. They can go to conferences, but we're saying to them, get as many branches into the process of conference. 70% is quite a high number to go to a conference itself. The PTT will also intensify support to regional task teams to ensure unifying and credible conference processes. That will include working with branches and regions to gather all the facts in order to subject cases of disruption of a very few BBGMs to disciplinary processes of the organization. No one has a right to deny ANC members their right to meet and exercise their internal democratic processes because we have got a dispute resolution mechanism in the organization. So even if you have got whatever grievance, you have no right to disrupt any meeting for whatever reason. That is not allowed, even if you may think you are actually correct. On governance, the PTT also received a report from its subcommittees. Our subcommittees reported on the work they've been doing since the Lakota, which continue to engage all key sectors of society through various programs. Notable developments include the following: the successful ANC Gauteng PTT white paper review workshop on local government, which we held in Ekurhuleni, which is our provincial contribution to the ANC national process. We've canvassed views in the regions. We went to a provincial conference. It was a closed conference. We didn't have a media, but we made very important contribution to the white paper on local government. To strengthen it, that process, we have submitted as a province to the NEC Legislature and Governance Subcommittee our proposals, which are part of the national process of the ANC. You may be aware that they've postponed the deadline from June 30th to the 31st, or end of July. So the ANC will make a consolidated input on the white paper to COGTA, and we have contributed to that process. The second area, because there were many areas, we didn't want to outline them all, the continued rollout of political education across various sectors, including traditional leaders, faith communities, and the youth. Our Commission on Religious Affairs and Religious and Traditional Affairs held a very, very important foundation course for religious leaders and traditional leaders last week, attended by almost 300 of them, where they were saying, we are traditional leaders, we are faith-based leaders who support the ANC or are members. We also want to get what the foundation course is about. We had expected 150, we ended up with 300 oversubscription of that workshop. So we're also doing this foundation course at sectoral level. That's why we said our PTT subcommittees must also organize it for the people they are working with who are interested, so that they also understand the thinking in the organization and how the organization, because somebody may support the organization but not know how its policies function and so on. They don't have to be members, but there will be a sector. It's organized for that sector. You don't have to be a member because we have done the foundation course, therefore you become a member. The third area, preparations for President Nelson Mandela Day programs across the province, which are organized through our parliamentary constituency offices, our regions, our zones. And we say the day programs which are on Friday, but the whole month is the Mandela month. So people can organize them even post-Friday, those activities of community work. And it also dovetails with our program of community outreach, which will continue beyond July in the community. The ANC must become helpful in the community in the various sectors, whether it's through ECD, it's through elderly people, it's young people who are experiencing problems with substance and substance abuse, assisting families to direct them to rehabilitation centers, etc., etc. Ongoing support for sporting and cultural achievements. That's why we issue statements when there are successes by various sporting codes in Gauteng, including by provincial and national teams and arts professionals. Those who come from our province, we acknowledge them for their work. And we know that the Arts and Culture Department works with some of the artists and sports people in some of the preparatory work for this international events and so on. More work has to be done, including by the private sector. So it cannot only be government which support our sports persons and our artists. The private sector, which has got more resources than government, must also contribute as part of its community social responsibility. On local government elections, the PTT reaffirmed the need to consolidate organizational readiness for the 2026 local government elections. The Provincial List Committee has now been established in line with ANC national guidelines. The guidelines, for example, say people who are on the list committee must have post-matric qualifications. So we've done it. We've submitted our names. Remember, I'll explain. It's 3 senior people. Even those senior people must have post-matric qualifications. And then the rep, 1 rep from the alliance, alliance structure, and 1 rep from the leagues. A full-time provincial election machinery is being established, supported by a structured campaign strategy focused on the following areas. These are just a summary of the campaign strategy which came out of our provincial election strategy. We also held a provincial election strategy in Gauteng. We're going to have the regional election strategy workshops of the 3 metros and the 2 districts. We're finalizing that, where we'll have an intense planning for the coming elections. We hope to have it by the end of this month, late being the first week of August, the regional election strategy workshops. But this strategy came from the provincial strategy workshop which we've held, targeting areas of electoral decline, VD by VD, including suburbs and historically marginalized communities. We're also going to have a team which focuses on suburbs and estates, which will be part of our organization building subcommittee, just focusing on what we call suburb, the former white areas, and the estates, which will have it will be a community in that estate. Even if it's in a VD, it will be a community sometimes of 1,000 people living there in an estate. 500, 1,000. So we've agreed that we must form a task team in terms of the election strategy. So we focus on that. Strengthening by-election performance. Even if it's not our ward, we must increase from 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. At least those by-elections where we need to increase. Party agent training and deployment logistics. Intensifying youth-focused campaigns through increased voter registration, which is we'll do it online, ID drives, and sectoral outreach. The PTT strongly condemned the recent spate of ongoing violence targeting municipal councillors and government officials in the province. The PTT adopted a resolution for the Gauteng Premier and PTT co-convener, Comrade Panyaza Lesufi, to urgently engage law enforcement agency to get a report on cases being investigated and to request cold cases to be reopened in all regions, particularly Tshwane and Johannesburg. On the national dialogue, the PTT noted with pride the launch of the national dialogue by President Cyril Ramaphosa, viewing it as a vital platform for national unity and solution-driven engagements. Remember, the national dialogue was not proposed by the ANC. Some people, when they debate, it's as if ANC went to its NEC and proposed. The proposal was made. Remember that church convened conference where Bishop Mpumuloana came out with this call for a national dialogue. They then asked President Mbeki to communicate that decision to the National Executive Committee of the ANC. People have forgotten that, conveniently. The ANC welcomed that proposal for a national dialogue, coming outside its ranks, and said we'll work on it. We agree, what is it all about, and so on. So just wanted to make that point, because in the national discourse, it's as if the ANC just went to its NEC, resolved to have a national dialogue. Now some people don't like the dialogue. And it took time for the ANC to agree, actually, on the dialogue. It was proposed in 2023, but it was only accepted that it should happen before the national elections, and then further discussed and accepted towards the end of last year. And then formally then agreed to early this year. The withdrawal, the ANC Gauteng province remains committed to playing a constructive and leading role in the process and encourages all sectors, including political parties, to participate meaningfully. The withdrawal of the Democratic Alliance from this important national process is both it's unfortunate, regrettable, shameful, and telling about their continued unwillingness to engage the broader South African society beyond narrow-minded political interests. The PTT recommits itself to the continuing task of uniting, rebuilding, renewing, and strengthening of the ANC in Gauteng. We acknowledge the commitment and dedication by ANC-led Gauteng Government of Provincial Unity in its efforts of tackling Gauteng 13+1 priorities outlined by Premier Panyaza Lesufi during the 2025 State of the Province address. Progress on the priorities will be intensely evaluated by the PTT subcommittees in October 2025 as part of the evaluation of the first 2 quarters of the 2025-2026 financial year. That is April to June and June to September. Remember, we couldn't do April to June because we just come out of the Lekgotla. But we'll combine the 2 quarters of the year where we'll do cluster meetings of the PTT subcommittees and evaluate those 13+1 priorities. And our subcommittee on local government intervention, headed by Comrade Trevor Fowler, and the legislature and governance, in August and September we'll be doing follow-up with local government to check those issues which they would have committed themselves in their budgets in June. What plans are there? what budgets have been put to those plans, because some of the priorities of the G13+1 are the same priorities with province: fixing traffic lights, closing potholes. For example, the province has already started fixing lights on provincial highways. They're already starting to close potholes on provincial highways. The municipalities must then explain to our two subcommittees what are they doing about internal roads, resurfacing of roads in places like Soweto and so on. And that work will then come into that assessment in October, because they are focusing on local government. The PTT subcommittees are focusing on provincial government. That will then be brought into those assessments to then check, are municipalities working together with the provincial government through, for example, the Premier's coordinating forum with mayors, MECs forums with MMCs in the municipalities. So the two subcommittees will then do August and September focusing on local government, so that by the time we come to that October assessment of the 2 quarters, we have a sense of the first quarter of the municipalities, because the municipality quarter starts in July to September, remember? Now we have the 2 quarters at provincial level. We'll do the 2 quarters of the province and the first quarter of the municipalities, with that report which we have got from the 2 subcommittees of the PTT. And then we can then make some form of statements on whether we're making progress on the implementation of the G13+1 priorities. With 4 regional conferences approaching and the 2026 local government elections in the horizon, the ANC Gauteng PTT remains firmly focused on restoring the confidence of the people of our province, which we said is not going to, it's going to take time, and ensuring the delivery on the commitment made for a better life for all. That's all, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, PC. We can now take the questions. Any questions? I'll just give you numbers. Number 1, 2, 3, 4. You will be number 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Who else?
That's 4.
Okay, Snetton. Oh, Siam Tanda. I gave you a new name now.
Just a few questions, really. Is the Premier in the House? I know it's not Monday, so he's probably doing government work. It would have been lovely if he could join us. Are you able to say why he's not joining us? Because, I mean, there's a burning subject in the country that we need response from the PPT and the Premier with regards to General Economy's revelations that one Sunday. But I am going to pose my question Friday. But let me start with you, Mr. Papo. Can you please just tell us which of the regions have set dates for the conferences? I mean, July is ending, August is next week. Just specifics on the regional conferences. And also, in terms of what the general said with how Gauteng is concerned, the allegations, he spoke about a factory, a drug manufacturing factory happening in Gauteng. I'm not asking for us to speak about guilt or whatever, but were you guys aware of such a factory existing in Gauteng, controlled by an international drug cartel that has been distributing drugs across the country before the general made the allegations? And also, in terms of the other allegation that the syndicate that is operating in Gauteng includes law enforcement officers, metro police, MPs, politicians, has the ANC in Gauteng reflected on how that impacts you guys as a party? And you also spoke about your election strategy. Have you thought about what that's going to do for your electoral, what you would like to see happening in the local government elections? Thank you. Oh yeah, sorry. Just one last one. If any of your people, and I want to put this to the Premier, but it's not here, if he is summoned to the commission as the leader of government business, will he cooperate?
Number 2.
Griselda Lewis from SABC Television News. Mr. Pabo, we're headed to the local government elections, and the cause for today's briefing related to the killing of councillors, etc. We tend to see a rise in that kind of violence as we head towards the local government elections. You did say that you are in talks with the law enforcement agencies to look at a report on what that comprises of at the moment. Do you have any indication in terms of figures? What have we seen? How rife is this? And of course, I would presume that you're doing this or having this briefing relating to this particular aspect on the basis that we're quite close to the local government elections now. And my second question relates to what Semtanda also spoke about the current issues in the country at the moment. Your take on, the sentiments that have been shared. Literally, I think just before we went live on this press conference, questions about the kind of allegations that have been made against, certain entities within the country. I mean, should South Africans be concerned about what is taking place at the moment? And I know that these issues will be ventilated in this commission of inquiry that the President spoke about. But obviously something tangible needs to come from there. As Gauteng, some of these allegations that Semtanda spoke about affect this particular region. That must be of concern to you as the PTT as well. And just on, in light of all these security issues that have been raised over the past couple of days, a sentiment was shared by the Minister in the Presidency yesterday, and I kind of think when she speaks about the fact of a risk of a coup or potential coup in South Africa, this sentiment is being shared where there seems to be serious allegations of the security cluster being compromised. So I'd like your take on that, given that the sentiments she shared comes at a time when so many allegations are being made about, the police, the judiciary, and all sorts of, in line with that coup, I guess, alleged coup that might happen. Thank you.
Number 3.
Thank you. Refula Mekwa, SABC Radio News. Just to add on to what my colleague Griselda has said in terms of political killings, is the party in the province aware that I think last month when I spoke to the City of Johannesburg's chief whip, Stembisa Zungu, he did disclose that about 6 ward councillors have been receiving life-threatening messages. Is the party aware of that, and what is the party intending to do about the safety of its councillors now that we get into local elections? Thank you.
Number 4. You covered. PC, you may respond.
There were dates of July and August. We said to them, because that depends on the number of branch. We said that there were dates of end of July, middle of July, August, end of August. We said because the number of branches which have already started taking place will not allow conferences to take place. They should rework their roadmaps so that they include as many branches as possible in that process. Remember, we are not rushing to conferences, but we just want to ensure that they are done before the National General Council. So we don't have we're not given a certain date that by this time you should have had conference. We want to ensure that the processes are actually proper. That is why we say those 3, 4, already we have held. Remember, we're supposed to have branch biannual general meetings and branch general meetings in 4 regions. Joburg has got 130-something branches. Ekurhuleni has got over 100 branches itself. Tshwane has got over 100 branches. So already since June, we are already over 120 BBGMs, which have already happened. So they must rework the time frames on the basis of the number of BBGMs which have already convened. Remember, if the ANC system is a bit tight also, we don't verify those branches. It's the national membership system administratively which verifies those branches, whether people were at a particular venue, they gathered there. Remember, you scan members at those meetings, the IDs at those meetings. So we're also still waiting for the verification of those branch biennial general meetings from the national office. So once they've reworked them, their roadmaps have to be reworked by the officials, the working committees of the RTTs, and the RTT. Once in the last week, they've been doing it. We hope they'll finish that process this week, and we'll have a sense with them what are the better dates in terms of the regional conferences. We are also dealing with complaints. Our organization accommodates complaints and disputes, which other parties generally don't do. You must accept the outcome of the meeting. We do it. Sometimes some of our members also do wrong things. They think they can rock up at an office without an announcement when we have a provincial dispute resolution committee. That's why we say we're not going to allow those kind of behaviors where people can because even if you have a meeting, you can't deal with online membership system in a meeting. It requires staff at head office to deal with those issues. So we'll have a sense, hopefully by the end of this week, on the reworked, because it cannot be reworked by a regional coordinator. It has to have the approval of the RTT, that reworked roadmap. Remember, Gauteng has been closing some of the drug factories, even before Mkwanazi has announced. There are a number of factories, so-called factories, which were impounded by the police in Gauteng. If there are more, our view is that they must be closed. Those who are involved in those factories must be arrested, charged, and sentenced to jail. That's our position on whatever factory which is talking about. But there have been factories which were closed. Even whatever he has mentioned, if it's there, you're going to provide evidence, that factory must be closed, and those who are associated with it must actually be arrested and charged. We actually discussed at our Lekgotla the issue of crime, drugs in our province, and we said that's an area the province, through the community safety department and law enforcement agencies, must actually contribute. That includes the syndicate operating. Any official, any leader who's associated with criminality, the law must take its course. Because they are clearly not sent by the ANC or any government department to do that. And we will, as you say, we'll actually have to know. Because sometimes there's a confusion of leaders and officials. They are in the police, they are in government agencies of law enforcement, the leaders themselves, any leader, they must be arrested, charged, and the law must actually take its course. Whenever there are syndicates, and those syndicates must actually be hunted, they must be closed, those syndicates. And syndicate investigations take a lot of you have to have intelligence, which is proper. They use a lot of money to buy people. Sometimes you think people are working with you to investigate, they are not, because they are on the payroll, secret payroll of criminals. It has happened in many countries, this thing. In Italy with the mafia, in New York with the gangs in New York and California, Los Angeles. It took them almost 30 years to actually break the neck, 40 years in the USA and Italy to break the neck of gangsters. We're only a 30-year democracy. That's not an excuse. That's why we say they must be arrested. But sometimes there has to be context. South Africans have to push further. They must push further in terms of ensuring that the law takes its course. But we're a constitutional democracy. So as a province, we endorse the positions of the National Working Committee of the ANC on the matter. We support the Judicial Commission of Inquiry established by the President, because facts must be presented. And we also reject the notion that nothing has been done on the Zondo Commission. It is not based on facts. It's just sentiment. It's not based on facts. I mean, if the Zondo Commission costs you 1 billion, but you recover 11 billion, you seize assets, You have the Commission on SARS, which makes improve the performance of SARS in terms of the systems which are put in place. So the notion that commissions waste time, there are commissions whose things, but these ones, the two, the Nugent one and the Zondo Commission, work is happening. 60 cases are in court. ESCOM, some of the agencies. The reality is that with financial crimes, you have to have tight cases before court. Otherwise, you lose them, and people sue the state for wrongful arrests. So calling for people to be hauled before courts when you don't have what you call prosecutable cases is very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And people are going to say, but we have lost the case. The same people who are saying that people must just be hauled before court, before you have to seek chartered accountants, you have to use accountants, you have to go to other jurisdictions where the money is actually held. You need to then have cooperation of those who have run away to other countries on extraditions. Some of the countries don't extradite people because you find that some of their economies are based on money invested in their economies from actually embezzled money and criminal money. So if they extradite one person, they must extradite everybody else. Those are some of the dynamics. So, but our view is that there must be arrest, there must be investigations, arrest, charging of people, and sentencing them to jail. But we fully support the position taken by our president and our National Working Committee, so that we don't actually end up losing cases because of rushing. Because we're dealing with organized, as Dr. General Mkhwana says, organized criminality. Organized criminality hides its tracks. They use a lot of money to corrupt people. You need to be careful on how you investigate those cases, but they must be investigated. So that's the position of our province in terms of that matter. We also, so the syndicates we've given, the Premier has to cooperate, but I cannot answer for the Premier. But we would expect the Premier to cooperate on the work Gauteng is doing, because the Community Safety Department is in the office of the Premier. We cannot speak on behalf of government. The Premier is not here because it's me who have to address the press briefing. The first one was here because we just came out of our first major meeting. That's why he was here. And there were certain policy issues which you would have asked, which we felt he needs to be here to explain them. The deputy coordinator was also here. It depends on the issues also, but we also don't want to conflate government responses with organizational responses. They will convene a press conference of government and explain. And you saw after that a media briefing of our Lekgotla, Premier convened a conference on the issues of lifestyle audits which were conducted in the province. It's part of dealing with mismanagement, maladministration, and corruption in the state. So he was responding to that issue. He will update you through government, because our view in Gauteng is not to interfere in government, but guide strategically on the basis of decisions and policies and programs of the organization. They must then implement in government and give us quarterly reports through the subcommittees of the PTT. We don't want to meet with administrators in government, because those people are not employed by us. We meet with our deployees, who are the MECs and the Premier. They must then meet with the administrators in government. That is very important, which the PTT said we should do in this province. We are not interested to meet an HOD, a chief director. They are not employed by us. We have not even signed their employment. It's the MECs and the Premier who appoints those people, so that we don't have confusion about the state. But I think we are of the view that we think that the Premier will cooperate to explain, because the Premier always talk about issues of crime. Even in our officials meeting, that issue is always on the agenda under the agenda item governance. Councillors' killings, that's why we're saying all the cases. There are a number of councillors who were killed in Tshwane, councillors who were killed in Johannesburg, and there are a few government officials, let's say in West Rand, who were also killed. All those cases in Ekurhuleni, whatever, but our figure, that's why we want a consolidated report on all, because those cases have been reported, the investigation started. Why are there no breakthroughs in terms of those investigation. We don't have a specific figure. That's why the decision of the PTT said the convener and the premier must engage. We can't engage law enforcement agencies. It has to be the premier. Because this is why this issue of separating party and state is very important, so that we don't have a situation where ANC can convene commissioners of police and things like that. It's not correct to do that, unless they do it through the portfolio committee where our members participate. The premier will be the one who engages. He will report to the people of Gauteng, because we are not interested only us who are raising the issue. If they get the statistics, they must go to the people of Gauteng and explain. Because this phenomena, when we met, they just, after our meeting, they killed the councillor. And we raised that issue on Monday last week. The councillor was killed, I think, on Tuesday in Mamelodi. There is a forensic head of Egoruleni who was killed. All those cases, officials of government and councillors. But we are also saying cases of murder in Gauteng, there has to be a sense what's happening with those cases. But we are talking about that this phenomena issue which you associate with preparations for elections. We are aware of some of the councillors who report to their chief whips about that. And municipalities must take proactive actions to create safety for public representatives. Because remember, they become public representatives until after midnight on the day of elections. So they will be public representatives. So municipalities must take preventative measures to ensure that all public representatives in their jurisdictions have security, so that they are able to serve communities. In an environment of competition, you also have opportunism, where people will march to a home of a councillor for things which are not even related to their work. Foreign nationals. What does the councillor to do with foreign nationals issues? At 10 o'clock, it's a women councillor, creating safety problems in some of those areas. Because certain things which happen in our communities are not correct. When we must say so, they are not correct. When you march to a home of a councillor on issues of immigration, what do you expect the councillor to do? It's a matter which must be addressed by all of us. And it will be funny, some of the people who march to a home of a councillor will be having a domestic worker from Lesotho, but is in a march about about foreign nationals. The people who do gardening in their home come from Mozambique. They repair their cars from Mozambique mechanics. But in the community, they pretend, and I raised that issue in the previous conference. Let's have honesty about this issue and not do double standards. You use services of foreign nationals, but you protest about them when they use services of government. But it's wrong. We said it, that thing. So I'm just saying that the issue of safety which you have raised, our view is that the municipalities must take responsibility, but the police themselves need to do risk assessment in that space, because you can't give increased security for any public representative when you have not done a risk assessment of why would people threaten a public representative. So that those risk assessments must be done through the initiatives of the municipality, but proactively the province itself, we said it should work with the mayors of the municipalities to look at that issue, so that we proactively we don't wait for June 2026. We start now doing those risk assessments where the province works with the municipalities, because the premier has got a premier coordinating forum where the mayors also participate there. They should take up that issue there and then do that assessment and deal with it. We don't want to have the details and so on. At the principled level, let's do that so that we don't have a situation where we've got by-elections on the eve of national elections because some criminals and delinquents have killed a public representative elected by people in that ward. So we don't have the figures, but we expect the Premier, after engaging, he has already started. We just don't want to talk on behalf of the Premier. We have a sense of some of the issues, but as I say, we cannot speak on behalf of the Premier in his capacity as a governor of the province. Should South Africans be concerned about the revelation? Yes, they should be concerned. But the concern should not lead to kangaroo court mentality. Because kangaroo court mentality and constitutional democracy don't go together. Everybody wants to have a fair hearing. You can't You can't just make statements, so and so must just be what you can't. Even people at their workplaces, they don't want to be accused and they don't have to have a hearing. If it's like that, we must cancel all laws protecting individual rights of South Africans. But once that has happened, the law must take its course. So the concern must be there, because that's good citizenship to be concerned about what's happening in the law enforcement agencies. In our view, all people who are in the law enforcement agency who are collaborating with criminals, they are not suitable to be in our law enforcement agencies. They must be, the investigations around them must be done, they must be charged, and then they must be sentenced to jail. That's our simple position. No prevarication about it. Because when you are in the system and you are collaborating with criminals, you are the biggest danger to the safety of people of South Africa. As I say, we're not saying it used to happen in Italy, New York, and so on, but we can even learn examples from other countries which face mafia type of organized criminality for years and years and years. In Italy, they were even killing prosecutors. They were killing magistrates. They were killing investigators. They will kill a witness before they appear in court, in front of a court in Italy. So we cannot reach that stage. That's why we must reverse it. But we are a constitutional state. We can't people open and shoot them without a hearing. They must be charged. They must be sentenced to jail. We don't want to come. I don't, because the comments of Minister Nchaveni was about, as they do risk assessments currently and over the coming years. I think that report was about that, because intelligence has to do all sorts of risks about their work. So whatever is found by the risk, they must act. The law enforcement. Remember, intelligence agencies don't act on their reports. They supply those reports to the law enforcement agencies, as in police, hawks, and so on. That's why you'll see sweep raids and so on. Those raids normally will be coming from criminal, the crime intelligence, military intelligence, and so on. So we're saying whatever has been found by those risk assessment reports, there must be action taken on those reports. That's the only thing we can say, because we are not in that space and we don't want to speak on behalf of government at national level. So there must be action, because he also said there were certain actions which were taken after those risks were done, but they cannot announce them. Police hawks will sweep on these people, they will sweep on that, but they cannot announce that it came from our own reports from the intelligence community, as she said. But every risk which has been, there must be proper plans to counter it, well ahead of that risk. And we hope that the process of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry will help to clean, because she said that they were working on the basis of that report which was issued by Dr. Mufamadi. They used that report in terms of also working in that community. But they will be better placed to actually respond in detail. But at the principal level, whatever is coming out of risk, there must be action on it by the police, because it cannot be the intelligence community which acts. It has to be the police. I think I've answered all the questions.
You covered all the questions. I would check whether there's any follow-ups. Number 1, 2. Anyone? I will find. SABC, I will find. Beneshi. Thank you.
No, apologies for the late arrival. My name is Lunga. I'm from the Medan Guardian. My question would be based on the issue of what's happening in China. In 2021, they were leading to the local government election. There was, I think, then Minister Begitele was a councillor that was killed in that area, and said the people who had killed that councillor were known. But as of date, I don't remember them being arrested. And secondly, what people, senior leaders of the ANC in China are saying is that most of the saying about 30% of their councillors are involved in criminality. Hence the issue of these killings that are happening. And they do refer to a caucus meeting where they said and discussed these issues about councillors being involved in issues of criminality. Is the PTT aware of such allegations to say your comrades in Tshwane might be, the issue of killings might be involved in criminal activities, and they make reference to say that a certain councillor that was killed not long was, or the community was celebrating. You look into that, we're going to elections next year. How confident is the PTT that with the current state of how the organization is viewed in the community, you are going to be able to regain the outright majority in that municipality? And secondly, I don't want to be forward thinking about this thing, but how are the regional conferences here in Gauteng looking out? I know one is going next month. I know Joburg is supposed to go in September. How are those arrangements have been going? And the last one is when is the provincial election conference going to sit? Thank you.
Number two.
My question about how the crisis in the police, law enforcement, is going to affect your electoral prospects next year. If you thought about that, and I'm asking this because this commission, I think everyone anticipates that a lot of people are going to be watching it, and you all know that the main group or demographic that the ANC struggles to penetrate is the middle class. And I just wanted to understand, have you considered what is happening, how that's going to affect the ANC in Gauteng in the next elections?
Just,
You want to make a follow-up?
yes, I just want to add on that. Also, how your internal polling, how are they looking in Johannesburg and Tshwane and maybe Ekurhuleni on
You expect us to give a response? Really? Hi, Weda.
Okay.
He's laughing because he knows I'm going to respond to that question. I think we've taken that. That's why we're saying that there is no person who's mandated by any structure of the ANC to engage in criminality. They are doing it as individuals, and the ANC dissociates itself from those people if investigations prove that they've been involved. We also have a step-aside policy that if they are charged, they must step aside from leadership positions. That's our policy. And those who say people must step aside, they must tell us which other party has that policy. We're the only one currently. So we're quite aware. But also we're clear that officials in government, if they are involved in criminality, it's not the ANC. They must actually also be charged. Those officials, they are not mandated. And as I said previously, majority of public servants of South Africa are not ANC members. We probably have maybe 500,000 or 250. I'm just saying the figures of ANC, which are there on the system, we have got over 1.5 million members, who some of them have to renew and so on and so on. And the public service at local, provincial, and national level is millions. So even those officials, they must face the law, those officials, in the law enforcement agencies and other areas. So our view is that we will dissociate ourselves from those people as an organization, so that it's clear that they are not doing this on behalf of us in the province. They are doing it for themselves, their families maybe, their friends. We are also not benefiting from those criminal activities they are involved in. That's one issue. It doesn't matter what the reason for the killing. Killing somebody is wrong. The police must arrest those people, whether they are killing that person for whatever reason. So we can't say because there are suspicions that some people are involved in, or maybe they are friends to criminals and they are killed. Therefore, that case must not be opened. It must be opened. That's why we're saying all the cold cases, particularly in Tshwane and in Johannesburg, must be reopened in that process of the premier with the law enforcement agencies. Tell us what happened. That's your question, as I say. Why have there not been arrests? Because right now we're not worried. If he arrest me, means somebody who's our member. So be it. because that person has not been sent to engage in criminality on our behalf. If he's not our member, that's fine. If it's our member, they are charged, they will step aside if they are in a leadership position, and when the case ends, we charge them. So our view is that you say we were aware. There are allegations. Those allegations the investigations on the matters must also establish. They will establish what could be the possible reasons for somebody to be murdered. Then we'll know whether those allegations are true or not. But our view is that whether for whatever reason, murders of councillors and officials and people broadly in our province is a serious concern for us, and police must actually provide regular reports to the Premier and to the people of Gauteng through the legislature or other platforms. The provincial conference, remember, the provincial conference is only next year. It was in June, July last year. So we're not talking about that conference now. We're talking about the 4, which is due. The provincial one is due next year. The regional one of West Rand is also due next year. The provincial one, to be direct, is June, July next year. That question you asked, whether we are aware, we have heard of allegations. That's why we want those cases to be opened, so that we know the reasons, whether those allegations are true or not. But that does not mean that there should not be risk assessment for public representatives in municipalities, because some people may be killed because they don't want corruption in their wards. Because you are saying some of them may be involved, not involved, they may be friends to criminals. Maybe that's the reason, and then they are killed. But the overwhelming majority of our councillors are not affected by those allegations. Some of them will be killed because they say projects in a ward must go according to the procedures of government. They are not going to be allocated to people on the basis that they are liked. And then those criminals may kill the person. That for us is not the issue. The issue is no one has a right to take a life of another person for whatever reason. I think but the poll we do, but I think generally in our wards, we've defended all our wards, which we've contested since we were elected. The one in the inner city and the one in Freedom Park, we've won them with increased numbers. So at least that's a good foundation. In the West Rand, in a DA ward, we increased our numbers from 10 to 20, 21 in Randfontein. In every ward, it's only one ward in Tshwane where we performed very badly, so you are aware. But the other ones which were contested, we increased our trailer. If with more work, our branches beginning to work, what they're supposed to do, we think that even in those wards, we'll benefit from the PR votes. Because if your support increases in a ward, it also has an impact on your PR votes. So we are confident that the work of rebuilding, the work of renewal, will also increase our support. Our branches beginning to work with communities, as is their function. The support will actually increase. By the time we go to local government elections, we will actually perform a little bit better, because Tshwane, even with the decline, performed better than other metros last year in terms of the support. But you can never make exact predictions until you see, let's say at the end of this year, you see at the end of March, you see at the end of July with the internal polling. But it shows that in our strongholds, we are not actually losing our support. We've increased it in the wards we had to defend since we are appointed as a PTT from what happened in 2021 and now.
Thank you very much. Unless there's a question not answered, I think there's only one question.
Which one?
That relates to the Mkonazi saga and how do we think it's going to affect us in the next election? So I think that's what we need to answer.
we think that the investigations must be completed so we know who's who in the zoo, and if there are people who are affected, must actually be face the law. And ourselves, we will dissociate ourselves from those people if they are part of us. Will not actually, because the commission is going to come up with a lot of and very clear that the terms of reference will actually, the cases, the recommendation will then have to go to the Hawks. They must then pull together a case, because from a recommendation you must now package a prosecutable case. The Criminal Procedure Act has got rules and so on, and then you can actually lose it on a technicality if you just rush. And we have examples of situations where you rush to court and then you actually come out bad. And then the people who have been asking you to hold the people before court are not there when the state is sued for wrongful arrest. I just want to say that our view, in closing, is that the renewal of the organization is going to be a very, it will have fast paces. It will be slowed down, because when you are dealing with a situation where you are rebuilding, there will be people who will want to pull back, reverse. But we are determined to finish the task, because majority of our members accept that they as individuals and as part of the organization have to change their attitudes. They must change their day-to-day behavior to make positive contribution to the organization. Because you can't renew when you as an individual don't want to change some of your wayward behaviors and negative behavior. And then you take that to a collective, which will be a BC, an REC, a PTT or a PC. That will not work. It must start with the individual. The leaders are a minority, basically. The members are the majority. If they actually accept that there's need for change, they will elect leaders at branches and regions and the province who have got a service mentality, and not a mentality which we call nkgeteng mentality at all costs. Nkgeteng at all costs. Even if I don't have the capacity, I must be elected because I know certain people in the organization. No. But we were quite determined. And the ANC had to do this in its history. In the 30s, in the 60s after its banning, it had to rebuild after its unbanning in 1990. Even now, we are determined to actually see through that this work of unity, rebuilding, renewal and strengthening of the organization is actually executed and will be part of how the organization functions on a day-to-day basis. Thanks.
Thank you very much, PC. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the media, for your presence here. We will improve as we go on. We are aware that this week, PC, is a busy week.
Yeah, that's right.
But we said, let us ensure that we also, because we're supposed to brief the public last week, and we brought it to this week. But you know that there's lots of competing interest out there, and we hope to find a space in between. But we want to thank you for making time to come. Thank you very much. We'll end here.
Do they want follow-ups on things like that? They'll do them with...
We'll end here.
Do they want follow-ups on things like that? They'll do them with...
Speaker mic, can you hear me? Platform, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Thank you.